Picture this, August 6, 1945. High above a world torn apart by war, a single B-29 bomber, the Enola Gay, is flying on a top-secret mission. And what it's carrying? Well, it's a power that Earth has never, ever seen before. A single bomb. And its target is the city of Hiroshima. After this day, absolutely nothing would be the same. So today, we're going to unpack the story of how that terrifying power was created, the impossible choice to unleash it, and the world it left in its wake.
You know, that date is just burned into our collective memory now. But on that Monday morning, for the people of Hiroshima, it was just another day. The promise of clear, sunny weather was in the air.
And way, way up there, so high it was almost invisible, was a lone silver aircraft, the Enola Gay, a B-29 superfortress. I mean, this was one of the most advanced pieces of technology of its time, and it was just a tiny speck in a bright blue sky.
Now, this wasn't your typical bombing run. The mission wasn't to drop hundreds of bombs. Nope, it was to drop just one. A single device that held a destructive power the world couldn't even begin to imagine.
This single moment was the climax of a secret war, a frantic scientific race, and a truly terrible decision. It wasn't just about ending a war. It was about changing the very meaning of power, of conflict, and of human survival itself.
All right, let's go back to the beginning of that flight. It all starts in the pitch-black, pre-dawn hours on Tinian Island. The time is 2:45 a.m. On the runway, that B-29, the Enola Gay, is just sitting there, its engines humming, ready to go.
Inside, a crew of 11 men were getting ready for a mission they knew would change history. Their cargo was a weapon with the strangely innocent codename Little Boy. But this was a single bomb that packed the punch of 15,000 tons of TNT. Think about that. But the story of this flight didn't really start there on the runway. To truly get what's happening, we've got to rewind a few years, to a world that was completely engulfed in war.
So let's jump back to 1941. The storm of war is already raging across most of the globe. But for the United States, it was still kind of a distant problem. Something happening over there. That is, until one quiet Sunday morning in December.
On December 7th, 1941, Japan launches this shocking surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor. Their goal was as simple as it was devastating: completely cripple the U.S. Pacific fleets so it couldn't interfere with their plans for expansion in Asia. And just like that, a reluctant America was pulled headfirst into the biggest war in human history.
President Franklin D. Roosevelt, he absolutely nailed it when he called it a date which will live in infamy. And what came next was this unbelievably brutal war in the Pacific. It was this island-hopping nightmare, fighting over places like Iwo Jima and Peleliu. It was just this bloody, inch-by-inch slog where Japanese soldiers dug into caves and tunnels would often fight right down to the very last man. The cost in human lives was just staggering.
Okay, so you've got this absolutely brutal conventional war happening. But at the same time, there's another war going on, a secret one. And it wasn't being fought in the trenches, it was being fought in laboratories and in secret cities. This was the race to build the bomb. And it all started with this terrifying fear. What if Nazi Germany gets one first?
And that's where the Manhattan Project comes in. This thing was, it was the most ambitious, most secret scientific project in history, period. It brought together the world's greatest minds, people like Oppenheimer, Fermi, Teller, to do something that sounded like science fiction: split the atom and harness its power. The scale was just immense. Entire cities, like Los Alamos in New Mexico and Oak Ridge in Tennessee, popped up out of nowhere, all for one single, terrifying goal.
And then, on July 16, 1945, out in the New Mexico desert, they did it, the Trinity test. It created a flash of light brighter than the sun, and it vaporized a steel tower. As he watched that first mushroom cloud rise into the sky, the project's lead scientist, J. Robert Oppenheimer, remembered a line from Hindu scripture: "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." That quote, it just sends a chill down your spine. They had unleashed this awesome, terrible power, and now someone had to decide what to do with it.
Okay, so fast forward a bit. It's mid-1945. The war in Europe is over. Germany has surrendered. But in the Pacific, Japan is a whole different story. They are fighting on with this ferocity that just stunned the Allies. In the Japanese military culture at the time, surrender wasn't really an option. The plan was to fight to the last man, woman, and child.
So imagine you're President Harry Truman. You have this agonizing choice in front of you:
On one hand, you can order a full-scale invasion of Japan, but all the projections say this would be a bloodbath, costing millions of lives on both sides and dragging the war on for maybe another year. On the other hand, you have this new weapon, the atomic bomb. It could end the war like tomorrow, but the cost would be hundreds of thousands of civilian lives in an instant. It was a horrifying cost-benefit analysis, but Truman ultimately believed that by using the bomb, he would actually save more lives than a prolonged invasion would cost.
So when Japan rejected the Allies' final call for unconditional surrender, the Potsdam Declaration, well, the decision was made. Which brings us right back to the Enola Gay, high above Japan. In the air, Captain William Parsons arms little boy, swapping out the dummy plugs for the live ones. The weapon is now hot.
At 31,000 feet, you hear the groan of the bomb bay doors opening. And down below, the city of Hiroshima is just waking up. People are heading to work, kids are on their way to school. They have no idea what's happening. No idea about the silent threat circling miles above them.
Then a mechanical click. The clamps let go. And little boy begins its journey. A 43-second, completely silent fall, picking up speed as it plummets towards its target, the city's distinct, T-shaped Ioi Bridge 600 meters below. The result? It's just a number that's hard to even comprehend. An estimated 140,000 people dead by the end of 1945, either from the initial blast or from the horrific radiation that followed.
For the people on the ground, well, how do you even describe it? A blinding, silent flash of white light. A wave of heat that incinerated everything. And then a crushing shockwave. The center of the city was just gone. In the ruins, they'd later find clocks, their hands melted onto the face, frozen at exactly 8:15 a.m. It was the moment time stopped for Hiroshima.
In the moments and hours that followed, the city was pure chaos. This thick, oily, radioactive black rain started falling from the sky. And a few hours later, President Truman's voice came over the radio announcing to a stunned world that an American plane had dropped one bomb on Hiroshima, and in doing so had unleashed the basic power of the universe. Imagine hearing that for the first time. Things happened fast after that. On August 6th, Hiroshima. Just 3 days later, a second bomb was dropped on the city of Nagasaki. Faced with this incomprehensible new weapon, Japan really had no other choice. On August 15th, for the first time ever, the people of Japan heard Emperor Hirohito's voice on the radio, announcing that they would surrender. The war was over. And for the American public, the first reaction was just this overwhelming sense of relief. You know, early on, scientists predicted Hiroshima would be a radioactive wasteland, uninhabitable for at least 75 years. But they were wrong. The people came back. They started rebuilding their lives, right in the middle of the ruins. And one building, right near the blast's hypocenter, was left standing as a skeleton of what it was. It was preserved just like that, becoming the atomic bomb dome, a permanent haunting reminder. But amid all the symbols of destruction, an incredible symbol of life emerged. Soon after the bombing, oleander flowers started to push up through the scorched earth. They were the first thing to bloom again, completely defying the predictions. They became the city's official flower, a quiet, powerful symbol of resilience and rebirth. Today, Hiroshima is a bustling modern city, but it's a city that carries its history in its heart. The events of August 6, 1945 pushed humanity kicking and screaming into a new atomic age, and it changed war forever. And it leaves us with this huge lingering question. In a world that still has thousands of these weapons, what have we really learned from the power that was unleashed on that clear summer morning?
Follow and subscribe.